We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNRadio.com.
Every time Roger Goodell gets in some measure of trouble, there's always somebody that feels like they're outsmarting the rest of us that'll talk about, well, just look at what's going to happen to the ratings in the first game. The NFL hasn't lost here. Or they'll tell you something about how as long as Roger Goodell is making money for these guys, they're never going to get rid of him. Now, in the Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham story that ties the Spygate to the Deflategate, and we got Don Van Natta joining us next segment. He'll be joining us at 9:30. But in their story, I'm glad somebody pointed to something that I've always wondered about, right? Which is this idea that Roger Goodell makes $44 million a year, which is kind of in line with a CEO of a company that is the size of the one that he works for. Like, it kind of makes sense. But every time he does something silly, somebody will make the argument that they're not going to get rid of Roger Goodell because Roger Goodell makes too much money for them. And you know, that's kind of funny because, hey, guys, these are still owners of football teams. Like, their whole existence is based on the disposability of the labor force. They always believe that we can get rid of somebody and get somebody cheaper that can do the same job. Like, that's how this thing works in operations this size. Like, this idea that they think that Roger Goodell is indispensable, I don't know about that. And in this story, there was a quote about that, where we basically fall over ourselves about how much money the NFL makes. What makes you think that those owners don't think that the NFL should be making more money than it currently makes? What makes you think those owners think that all this losing in court is actually winning them money? That's making them money. It's not doing that. And as I've said before, man, rich people ain't really about just being out here losing in court all the time. And now you hear those owners talking about, hey, man, I don't think that Roger Goodell should have all this power, right? Now we start. Arthur Blank has come out and said that. Roger Goodell says he considered getting rid of some of that power, but Shannon, he says he wants to set it up to where the appeals will be done by somebody that he designates.
So then essentially he's still in power.
It's the same exact thing. Like, that's exactly what it is. And I thought the Georgia Tyler of the Union made a very good point when he came on with this, where I asked, what do you say to people who say that you guys gave Roger Goodell the power and the right to do all the things that he's done? And he says, clearly they haven't, because in court this stuff doesn't hold up. Like, clearly they haven't. But your man Raj, somebody was quoted in this as saying, look, man, what makes you think that we can't make more money than we're making? Let me tell you something about Goodell, man, and you got to keep this sort of thing in mind. Credibility matters. And every time these things come up and people talk about how much money that they're making off this and everything else, okay, cool. But the reality is that credibility matters. And every time something like this happens, more credibility goes out the window. Credibility to me is like insurance. It doesn't matter until you need it. And when you need to cash it in and you don't have it, whoo! So you can talk all that noise. We don't need credibility. We don't need credit, just like insurance. I don't need insurance. I'd rather have that $150 a month. You know? Yeah, you got that money. Okay. But what you going to do when your car gets smashed? You know? What you going to do when no insurance runs into you? And that's the place I feel like this league is in right now. And I was thinking about it the other day. You know, this crazy story with the Washington football team and the neurologist, right? The neurologist that the soccer player came on Twitter and said he was a quack and talked about how I forget the gentleman's name. He's a soccer player who looked up and saw the name of the doctor in the Robert Griffin situation and said that guy made him play when he had a concussion and it like endangered his life, basically. This is the same doctor who, after we've been told Robert will play, suddenly this doctor turns up and he says, no, Robert can't play because Robert has a concussion. And then right around the corner, Washington rolled out their whole new plan for their new quarterback. After Robert's the starter, and then by happenstance, they get this concussion, and they had the whole plan ready already, right? Here's what happens when you don't have credibility. When you don't have credibility, that neurologist is independent. That's how they describe it. That is someone who's paid by the NFL. He works for the NFL. He is an independent neurologist. When you and your league don't have credibility, I have fair reason to question how exactly these independent neurologists work, because it appears that this particular neurologist has demonstrated in the past that he's basically willing to give the diagnosis that he is paid to give. When that guy worked for a team, he gave a diagnosis that put a guy back on the field, right? In spite of his own health. That's a guy that does what somebody tells him to do. Okay? Because I'm not going to believe that guy just felt like, I just really don't care about this today. I'll just send this guy out here with that. No. It sounds like that's a dude who did what he's paid to do. So then when you tell me that he's the independent neurologist assigned by the NFL, if I have faith in the NFL, I look at it and I say, okay, well, he said Robert Griffin had this concussion. It's an independent guy. He has nothing to gain. But when I question your credibility, I don't even have an explanation as to what the NFL would get out of it. I just know the NFL stays on some shenanigans. So would it be out of the question for a team to call and say, look, say this guy's got a concussion? Because, look, the doctor's not going to get any trouble for that. Like, putting somebody on the field when they got a concussion and saying that they don't is one thing, right? Saying a guy can't play, what you got to lose? Like, how's that going to be malpractice? How does that come back to bite you? You wind up being representative of the New World Order, a kind of gentler league that cares about people's injuries, right? When you don't have credibility, these are the questions that people ask. And we're going to ask these things about just about every single situation. This is life every day in the NBA, because the NBA has a credibility issue. You could ask whether or not they should. It doesn't change the fact that they have it. And it matters. And if Roger Goodell keeps winding up in situations like this, he's going to need to cash in on that credibility. Except he doesn't have any.
Bomani.
Our next guest, he is a writer for ESPN, the magazine. He and Seth Wickersham have a piece up that you can check that tells us basically how we wound up getting into this situation with Deflategate, and it starts in 2007. Don Van Natta joining us now. Don, how's it going?
Doing great, Bomani. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, man. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, this story I found to be very, very interesting, because I think a lot of us had said, well, you know, after Spygate, the league would want to come down hard on the Patriots if they thought that something else had happened. But the detail that you had there about how much was there in Spygate, like how much of that did we really know before?
Well, there's a lot of details that we have about the Spygate era that is brand new, and a lot of it is based on documents. We actually found documentation from Arlen Specter, the Pennsylvania senator, the late Pennsylvania senator, that shows conversations that he had with Roger Goodell in early 2008, as well as a guy named Matt Walsh, a videographer for the Patriots. And the details of how the evidence was destroyed, Bomani, in September of 2007, none of that was new. None of that was known. 8 videotapes were presented by the Patriots to the NFL executives at Gillette Stadium. They said, this is all the evidence there is, gave them 8 videotapes, and literally Jeff Pash, one of the general counsel of the NFL, smashed him with his shoes on the carpet at Gillette Stadium's conference room, and that was never been known either. So there's a lot of new information in our story.
Well, I found it to be interesting that basically it seems as though the NFL got into the Spygate thing, found out how bad it was, and it was the opposite of what we think of Roger Goodell, Captain Law and Order, except in that case he's like, hey, I don't think the world needs to know this.
That's right. And literally 3 days after the Jets caught the Patriots videotaping their coaches' signals at Giant Stadium Week 1, 2007, Roger Goodell had a phone conversation with Coach Bill Belichick. And Coach Bill Belichick told Roger Goodell in that 30-minute phone conversation, yes, I did this, but he did not describe how many games were taped or how many years were taped, what the scope of it was, whether any games were swayed. That was good enough for Roger Goodell, and the next day he punished the Patriots and Belichick, a $500,000 fine for Belichick, $250,000 fine for the Patriots, and stripped the team of a number 1 draft pick. and put out a press release that said that the spying only occurred in that previous game. And then it turns out, we found out through our reporting for the first time, that at least 40 games over 7 years were recorded by the Patriots. And I believe that's a very conservative estimate. And Goodell we had a source tell us, Bomani, as you know, if you read the story, a source said to us, Goodell did not want to ask the coach how many games he taped, and the coach did not want to tell him.
All right, we're talking to Don Van Natta of ESPN, the magazine. Now, were the other owners on board with the idea that this needed to be kept close to the vest?
Well, that's a very good question. It's a nuanced question, because there were owners that felt that way only the following year, when Senator Specter emerged and was doing a very aggressive investigation of Spygate and how it was handled, and said that this was an outrageous investigation that was conducted by Roger Goodell. At that time, there were some owners that felt this is bad for the league if the senator can actually do an investigation in Congress where people have to come on Capitol Hill, be sworn in, and have to tell the truth. Because if you lie to Congress, that's a federal crime. So at that time, it was a concern of owners. But more broadly, over the last 8 years since Spygate first broke, many owners were upset that evidence was destroyed by Goodell. It wasn't just the 8 videotapes that I mentioned. It was also some notes of some hand signals that were shredded at the Patriots Stadium. And they were upset because, they were upset by what they didn't know. And so what we reported is Deflategate in many ways was, as one owner put it, a makeup call for how lenient Roger Goodell was on Spygate.
Now, did the other owners have any idea, though, that this makeup call would turn into what it did?
Another good question. I think some of the owners we talked to and some of the league executives and team executives we talked to actually did predict it. They knew early on that this was going to be a tough one, but it didn't matter. A lot of it was just emotion-driven. They felt the Patriots had gotten away with so much for so long, and we report other things that the Patriots are alleged to have done in that 2000 through 2007 Spygate era, that it didn't matter to them. They wanted a comeuppance for Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Now, part of this is motivated by jealousy and resentment. There's no question about that. The Patriots are a dynasty in a team, in a league built for parity. But there was also a sense that Goodell, after being so weakened last fall in the way he handled the Ray Rice disciplinary matter, that, okay, he's got to strengthen himself. He's got to make it right with us. Some of these owners, some of these old guard owners, and they were very, very happy. We quote a number of them in our piece, some of them on the record, some of them blindly, saying they were pleased. They were glad that Goodell did this, even though it turned out to be a multitude of embarrassments in the way it was handled with the so-called Independent Wells report, all the stuff that occurred through this past year, that had a lot of bad headlines for the NFL. There were still owners, despite that said, okay, Roger Goodell was tough on the Patriots. He did Deflategate. A lot of these folks were thinking the way he should have done Spygate.
All right, we're talking to Don Van Natta of ESPN, the magazine. But now, after this embarrassment, after the year basically that we've come up on now, where Ray Rice last September, and this is where we are now this September, how do those owners now feel about Roger Goodell as the man in charge? You mentioned some of that in your piece.
He has actually strengthened himself, and there's been some interesting reaction to our story today about that. Among some owners, they feel Goodell did what needed to be done, and he's actually in a stronger position with some of these owners that were wavering on his performance at the end of last year because he took this tough stand against Bill Belichick and the Patriots. So he's turned it around, Bomani. He's actually made it a good thing, despite the fact that the federal judge just last week threw out the 4-game suspension against Tom Brady.
Well, I thought you mentioned something else interesting in that story, and I mentioned it last segment, which was we always talk about the owners would never do anything to Roger Goodell because he makes so much money for them, but there are some owners who feel like, A, anybody could make that money, and B, maybe we could find somebody who makes more money for us, but this principle stand is really that important to them.
It is when it comes to the Patriots. It's interesting. It's like, there was not this feeling when Roger Goodell did what he did on Bountygate and the Saints. You didn't hear this. There wasn't this animosity and this anger that the Saints were getting away with something for a lot of years, the way there is with the Patriots. And again, so much of Deflategate, and it got very little commentary throughout this year, was shaped by the prior. And I noticed that Roger Goodell was on Mike and Mike this morning, and he was asked a question about our story. He said he didn't read it. Not a surprise. He was on at 9:30, and our story was posted at 9 o'clock on ESPN.com. But the interesting thing is he sort of said, well, I don't think these two things have anything to do with each other. He just flatly said that. But I don't know how he can say that, because the letter that Troy Vincent sent out in May to the Patriots, giving them their penalties and also the suspension of Tom Brady, made it very clear that Spygate was in the frame, and part of the consideration, that prior crime, if you will, was the reason why the punishment was so tough on the Patriots. Not on Brady, but so tough on the Patriots. So it was clearly a consideration in the way they handled Deflategate.
All right, talking to Don Van Natta of ESPN, the magazine. Last question for you. Bob Kraft and his relationship with Roger Goodell, obviously that relationship appears to be strained now, but has any of this affected Bob Kraft's standing among the other owners?
Bomani, I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I can tell you that we have a quote in our story about this jealous-hater relationship that one of the owners told us exists among a number of owners with Bob Kraft. That exists because the Patriots have had so much success on the field. It also exists because Kraft was, for a while, the chairman of the compensation committee that decided Goodell's salary. He's now a member of the committee. Arthur Blank is the Falcons owner, is now the chairman. And he's had a lot of influence. He's gotten a lot of headlines for helping the NFL broker that great 10-year deal that all the owners love, with the players, because it was so favorable to the owners. And he's also been instrumental in the broadcast contracts. He's the chairman of the broadcast committee. So his influence, I think, some of the owners resent, and I think that fuels it. But the bottom line is, look, there's 32 guys with very big egos, these owners. They don't like to lose. Robert Kraft has won more than any of them. There is a sense, and I think our story makes clear, not necessarily proven, that the Patriots have pushed the envelope and maybe even cheated more than other teams. And Roger Goodell gave that team a break after 3 Super Bowl victories in 2007. And there is still a lot of resentment about that. So when there were some footballs found in that AFC Championship game below the PSI, which, I don't know about you, Bomani, I didn't know about that rule. I didn't know that quarterbacks could bring their own footballs into a game. I found that out, in January 2015. The owners were ready for Goodell to go hard, and he did.
All right, Don Van Natta, ESPN, the magazine. Check out his story with Seth Wickersham on the Patriots, Deflategate, Spygate, and how it all comes together. Thanks so much, my man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bo. Anytime.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Bomani.
Shannon, you see what happened over the weekend with Kansas State?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I saw the Enterprise.
Hey, if you haven't seen this, okay? If you have not seen this, Kansas State's band was doing a performance, and Kansas State's rival is Kansas, and that big old obnoxious Jayhawk, like they have the huge obnoxious Jayhawk at midcourt on their basketball floor, don't they? So they did a formation with the big old obnoxious Jayhawk, and there was something going into the obnoxious Jayhawk's mouth that they called the Starship Enterprise. They called it the Starship Enterprise. That's what they said it was. They said it was the Starship Enterprise. None of us thought that was the Starship Enterprise. Shady, you said you saw the Enterprise?
Captain Kirk said it was the Starship Enterprise.
Oh, that's what it was, huh? The Starship Enterprise. And, of course, the band director wound up having to apologize. And did you see where he, tweeted at? They tweeted out the markings. Because, they do these band formations by computer now. And so they put it in the computer program, and he showed the markings to show that it was the Starship Enterprise, and it looked nothing like the Starship Enterprise on the marking either. Like, everybody knew it. Why would the Jayhawk be eating the Starship Enterprise? Does anybody have an explanation for that one? Like, no, like, it's the Starship Enterprise. Why? Why? Riddle me that. It is 2015, and you're talking to me about the Starship Enterprise? What? So yeah, dude got in trouble. Those college bands, though, they like to do all kinds of ridiculous stuff like that. And that wasn't a student who did that, by the way. That was a grown man who had made that decision. Shannon, those are student bands. They wild out.
They like, got especially student band.
Especially at the smart kid schools. Like Stanford's band, they're not allowed to travel this year because they've been misbehaving. Rice, in Houston, their band is always good to, like, straight wild out. And I guess I enjoy the fun bands because most bands in major college sports kind of whack. Like, I rock with LSU's band because they stole all this stuff from Southern. Well, not all of it, but, there's a heavy influence, shall we say? Heavy influence from the school on the other side of town.
Right.
Ohio State's band.
I rock with them.
I rock with them because they got a fire to it. Like that Script Ohio thing, Buddy Dot in the eye is always so crunk.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, your bands are weak and boring. Like, I'm going to just tell you this right now. Your bands are weak and boring. Now, I am a graduate of Clark Atlanta University, a historically black college in Atlanta, Georgia. Shannon, you went to Elizabeth City State?
Absolutely, and Norfolk State as well. So I'm very well-versed in the HBCU culture.
2 more HBCUs. You were even in a band?
I was in band in high school, yeah. I couldn't read music, so I didn't think I would cut out in college, though.
Oh, you didn't do it in college? I thought you did it in college. Just in high school?
Just in high school.
I just want to know this, okay? I don't want to seem like the bad comedian. I really don't. But why does the band at the HBCU, why is it so completely different in every single way than the bands at the major institutions? All right? Now, this is not like your bad comedian, black people do this, white people do that, except for the fact that that's exactly what it is. I do not understand this. It's 2 completely different sets of people. You know what I mean? It's 2 totally different sets of people. Like, I'll be the first person to tell you, the biggest worry you got with that Kansas State band is, the Starship Enterprise. They might do something a little bit profane that they're not supposed to do. Biggest concern with HBCU band, quite often, a fight might start. Yeah, and it's not because everybody at the HBCU fights. It's because the band is just a different set of dudes. It's just a different set of people. I don't understand this.
They take this battle of the bands way to another level. They take it to another level.
No, but you think about this. Like, you go to, like, high schools or colleges, whatever, they're primarily white people. They have, like, the band nerd. You know what I mean? Like, the notion of the kid. And you see it when they show the bands in the crowd. You see the kid with the thick glasses and the braces and the bad haircut. Right. Like, go look at who's playing the quad for the schools in the Pac-12. And then go look at who's playing the quads at the schools in the SWAC. It's totally different people. And they're people at the HBCU who are like the kid playing the quads at Stanford. But he doesn't play the quads in the band at the HBCU. The dude playing the quads at the HBCU just might have it for cheap. I don't understand how in the world it works out that way. This is like the great chasm within our lives. Why are our bands nothing alike? I don't get it. By the way, shout out to all you bands out there playing that C Murder at these major college games. Like, I don't know the name of that song.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I heard it, I heard Georgetown's pep band do it at a basketball game once. And I asked their band director about it. The black dude is their director. But you guys know the stuff. Dun, 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 dun. Now, do you know what the name of that song is, ladies and gentlemen? Next time you hear it, put it up on Shazam. The title of the song will come up for you as Down for My N-Words. That's the name of the song. But Alabama was playing it. I saw it in the Alabama-Wisconsin game, Shannon. And so I got on Twitter and I asked. So, when the band director has to call out the song, what does he say the name of it is? You know? I mean, let's be honest. I'm not saying it's not possible that he might not say, there we go. It's perfect for if you got horns. It's perfect if you got horns. Hey, Shannon, you know what they call it? down for my defense.
Ah.
Because I was entertaining the possibility that he called it by the actual name. You never know. Different people are more comfortable than others saying different things. But they call it down for my defense. That's not the name of the song, ladies and gentlemen. That's not the name of the song. Just so you know.
Bomani.
Ohio State played Virginia Tech last night. I had said that I thought that Virginia Tech would keep that game close. Whoops. My bad. Shannon, what's up with your boys?
I think they did keep it close, and I'm not going to use obviously, I don't think they were going to win the game, but obviously the Brewer injury affected the entire game. Actually, I think it was Brewer's halftime comments that really changed the entire game when he said it was going to take a lot more than the first hit to knock him out the game.
Well, he took
Ohio State very much obliged.
They came through. Dude, they looked like they were in different weight classes.
Yeah, they did. And I thought going into the game, sorry for cutting you off, when it came to the discussion of which quarterback should play, I thought that Jones would be more difficult for Virginia Tech because Virginia Tech's defense is predicated on speed. Jones is big, really big, and as you can see, no matter how many Virginia Tech guys were trying to tackle him, he was still able to get the pass off. Ohio State's line was able to block, and Virginia Tech couldn't. They registered 0 sacks.
Yeah, and I'll say this. The argument about the Brewer injury, I'm not buying and the reason I say that is the numbers look good and the game was close when he was in there, but I saw that dude and I was like, man, this guy stinks. Like, those pop-ups that he was out there throwing, that wasn't going to last for long. Like, he may have been better than the other guy, but they weren't going to be very good in that game for very long with that dude playing.
But I think at least it gave them a chance, and once he went out, it seemed to really demoralize Virginia Tech, and they knew it. Once they saw him go out straight to the locker room and come back and then street clothes, they knew it was over because they knew Motley wasn't going to be able to pass the ball. And that says a lot about where Virginia Tech's program is, the fact that your backup quarterback could not throw a forward pass. What year is this?
Well, this is the team that last year got to 0-0 at the end of regulations, and their coach famously put both fists in the air. Like, I think you're right. If Brewer stayed in, they had a chance to cover the spread. Like, I think that they had a decent chance to cover the spread if that happened. Dude, there were points out there where it looked like every player on Ohio State's team that was on the field was bigger than every player that was on the field for Virginia Tech. Like, Urban Meyer has built an SEC team, not just in a non-SEC place, but the frightening part of it is he's doing this in a football state. And, Tressel did this in large part also, so did John Cooper when he was there. The ability to get what you need out of Ohio, because you basically can get damn near any player you want out of the state of Ohio, and then go to the South and get the guys that you need to kind of fill this in. I guess that's not terribly different than Woody Hayes and what he did either. But that's what it was. But it looks different when Urban is doing this now. Like, Tressel had a certain style of ball that he wanted to play. They're going to keep the game close or whatever. Right. Like, they had talent. But what's happening right now is crazy. Crazy.
Like, usually a team will have the big guys or a team will have the fast guys. Herb has the big guys, the quick guys, the fast guys, the smart guys. I mean, they are dialed in at this moment.
Hey, this ain't 2006, right? That 2006 Ohio State team all the way through that year looked amazing. They looked fantastic. They looked so good. And then they played against Florida. You've heard that story about what the Florida guys the coach looked at the tape and came to Urban Meyer about it, one of the coaches did. And Urban Meyer's like, so what do you see? And the guy said 2 touchdowns. Urban Meyer's like, what? He's like, we'll beat them by at least 2 touchdowns. Like, it was just that apparent on the film. They were just like, these guys are not fast enough to play against. That's not an issue anymore at Ohio State, right? Now, to be fair, that 2006 team, they had Ted Ginn on it. He was plenty fast, but Ted Ginn is not here for those hits, boy.
Remember, he got injured in the celebration after he returned the opening kick.
He did. And to be fair to Ted Ginn, by the way, he's not here for getting hit, and neither am I. Like, I'm not really judging Ted Ginn for not trying to get hit.
Mr. Run Out of Bounds?
My nickname would be Sideline if I played in the NFL. They call me Fair Catch if I had to run back kicks, and they call me Sideline if I ever had to touch the ball. Like, that's what it would be. Now, of course, I'm not saying that this is Ohio State is unbeatable. Nobody's going to beat Ohio State. Things happen in college football. They come up all the time. This is just kind of what it is. But, man, you had to look at that team and think. Go back and look at all the games that Jim Tressel won. I mean, it's not as though Tressel did not do a good job at Ohio State. Won their first national championship since 1968 when he was there, and they just rolled through the Big Ten. They dominated the Big Ten. They got themselves a Rose Bowl win, which in the history of the Big Ten has never been guaranteed, right? Like, Tressel had one of the great runs in college football for a coach at one school. And if you put one of those Tressel teams out there against this monster Ohio State is throwing out there, remember that Joey Bosa might be the best player on the team, and he did not play. Man, I wouldn't want no parts of that. None. Now, one thing that's interesting, though, I'd like to say this to Urban Meyer if he's listening right now.
I'm sure he is.
I'm sure. I mean, why wouldn't he be, right? It's the right time, baby. Anyway, if you're not going to play J.T. Barrett, man, let him go somewhere else. He's from, I don't know if you've heard, Urban, but he's from Wichita Falls, Texas. And,
wait, what are you trying to say?
I'm saying that we could use him. Texas could use them. That's what I'm saying. Texas. Do you know how frustrating it was last year to look at Ohio State and realize they had 3 quarterbacks and Texas didn't have one? And one of theirs was from Texas? Like, you're going to go out there with Cardell. Yeah, I get that. I'd start Cardell, too. You got to put the oldest man on the field out there. Cardell's the Greg Oden of college football. Do we agree? Can we agree on that? How old is Cardell Jones? About 35, 36?
He's a professional college student.
Yeah, you remember last year, after he bust on the scene, he had a baby. It's like he had a child. I'm like, how old is that little girl? 13? Look how old Cardell Jones is. I like Cardell Jones a lot, though. Like, I'm joking about this. I'm all about Cardell Jones. Cardell Jones looks like he's having fun. He ain't really out here for none of your back talk. I'm here for Cardell Jones. And I'm also here for J.T. Barrett. Put him on the bus and send him to Austin. Like, for real. You're just being greedy right now, Herb.
So
you're just being greedy.
You have ulterior motives when it comes to rooting for Cardell and his playing, his minutes, huh?
Look, I'm just saying, he's just being greedy. They should, if JT wasn't going to start, they should have told him that before the game so he got his transfer paper in and, say he got a sick relative or something like that and go ahead and take it to Austin. You don't need 2 quarterbacks. And I bet they got another one back there that we ain't even heard of. I bet Braxton Miller can still throw, too.
Yeah, they're redshirting one of the top dual-threat quarterbacks in last year's recruiting class.
What's JT doing, man? Why JT out here rolling the dice on his success, man? You're not guaranteed to play there. Come on home. Speaking of Braxton Miller, did you hear about this one? This was the Ohio State IMG network right here.
Miller with a snap. He'll start running to the left side of his own 45. Brings it wide to the left of the 45. Curls to the 50, to the 45 of the Tech. Spins to the 30. Middle of field Miller to the 20, to the 10. And Braxton Miller will take it to the house as he pirouetted away from a few Hokies and gives the Buckeyes on his 53-yard run a 27-17 lead.
How much money did Braxton Miller make himself by busting up his shoulder? Seriously, because one thing I misunderstood, I thought Braxton Miller was bigger than he was. I didn't realize he's only in that 6'1", 6'2" range. Like, I thought he seemed like he was bigger when he was playing quarterback. They keep talking about him as an H-back in these games. Remember, Percy Harvin played H-back in this offense. Like, this ain't the H-back that you're thinking about in the NFL. Braxton Miller is basically in that position where we're just going to give you the ball places, and we'll see if anybody can do anything with you. And the answer apparently right now is nobody can do anything with him. So you're going to have situations with Braxton Miller, Cardell Jones, and Ezekiel Elliott. How'd you like that 80-yard run from Big Zeke, Shannon?
I kind of predicted that one, too. Virginia Tech's middle linebacker has a problem, one, tackling, and deciding on which hole to take, so.
Yeah, well, one guy hit him in the legs, and then he was just gone. Like, that was it. Like, Cardell Jones didn't really put on that great a running performance in that game. Bud Foster was just like, we're not letting Ezekiel Elliott get the ball, and Cardell Jones was like, all right, Dan, I'll do it. Why not? We had never heard of this dude until the Big Ten championship game last year. How do you have all these quarterbacks and my team doesn't have one? You are greedy. Stop being greedy. Keep it real, partner. Give to the needy.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Bomani. So, high school football in Texas. People care a little bit too much about it. I can tell you this because I am from Texas, and I've seen on many levels just how much people care about this game. Well, got national news out of high school football in Texas. Shannon, did you see this? John Jay High School was playing a game, and these two defensive backs, two safeties were back, and you can see the umpire in position facing the offensive formation, and the play started, and one kid hit the umpire in the back, and then when he hit the ground, the other one came and speared him.
Right.
Now, Deadspin got a hold of it. It got everywhere. It's bad. Like, you watch the video. There's nothing positive that you can make out of it. Like, serious punishment is required in a situation like that, no matter what. But I have to say, I was shocked by how many people were calling for these guys to be brought up on charges. Like, charges. And then the next level was people saying that the young men should be suspended from school. And Shannon, you helped me out. How is not going to school the answer for something like that?
No, that's not an answer. If you want to suspend them for games or whatever the case may be, that's one thing. Suspending from school, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, no, situations like this come up, and everybody wants to show how bad they are in the name of punishment. Did you see all these different referee unions who popped up to make their statement about this? The National Referee Union popped up on this. All of them were in solidarity with their refereeing brothers. Like, I got to be honest with you, I did not realize that all the refs all over the world, like, clicked up in moments like these. I had no idea that it went like that, because the referees were putting on for the other referees. I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Shannon, it reminded me a lot of when LeGarrette Blount punched that kid at Boise State, right, and everybody and their mama wanted to put out a statement to talk about how offended they were, like even people that weren't actually that involved, but everybody had to come get their pound of flesh out of that situation. And LeGarrette Blount was wrong in it, certainly, but you're like, hey, everybody, maybe we need to calm down a little bit. Like, I'm not impressed by you saying that there's something wrong with punching somebody in the face. Right? We're all there. Right. And yes, if they make a decision about these two kids that they never play high school football again, or they don't play for the rest of the year, because one of them is a sophomore, I don't think that that's a never play high school football again sort of thing. If they want to make it a suspension for the rest of the year, I'm not making any sort of argument about that one. But once you start talking about taking people out of school as punishment, Shannon, if that ain't hustling backwards, I don't know what is.
I think they're comparing this to, since it's at a school function, and how you would get into a fight in the stands or something comparable to that. I think that's what they're comparing the possible suspensions to.
Well, the referee is basically seen as a civilian, right? And I did not know this until somebody did some research on it today and told me about it, that in a large number of states, there is a specific crime for assault on a sports official, like double-digit states, where the penalty for assaulting a sports official is higher than the penalty that you would generally have for assault.
Really?
Yeah, like the referees are now a protected privileged class as this goes. And that's why everybody that's talking about getting the law involved in this, I'm like, yo, calm down. Because you could certainly make the argument that letter of the law and assault was committed when these two high school football players hit that official when he wasn't looking. Like, I'm not denying that. I get what you're saying on that one. What I'm saying, though, is the consequences on the back end of that you don't intend are too much for something like that. It's like you start talking about suspending kids from school, who gains from that? Because when you suspend somebody from school, I think people lose sight of what happens. It's like you're not at school at all. And if you're actually, like, paying attention to your studies and care about that sort of thing, or God forbid that it's a kid who cares about them and is behind for whatever reason, missing school for a week can throw off your whole semester. Like, that matters. Like, that's actually a thing. The punishment for something like this can never be less education. And the punishment of it, to me, certainly shouldn't be, well, let's get you a criminal record right fast so you can carry this along. That might cause you trouble getting into college. And you especially can't do that when an assistant coach winds up getting himself suspended or put on administrative leave because he tells the kids on the field, I think that guy needs to, he needs to pay for cheating us, unquote. Now, Shannon, what the hell? What else was that supposed to mean other than y'all need to hit the ref?
That's exactly what these guys were instructed to do. Your coach tells you what to do, you do it.
Well, here's the question. How else can you make a ref pay? Like, you a player. What you going to do, fine him? What you going to do? What you going to do, cut his tires in the parking lot? Like, how else are you going to make the ref pay other than doing that? Now, I do think you can make an argument that just because somebody tells you to do that, you don't necessarily have to, but we know how these things go. You do what the man tells you to do. Like, that's what that is. You do what the man tells you to do. But I think that even in discussing this after that detail has been known, it seemed like most of the ire for this is coming toward the players and not toward the grown-ups. Because, look, if the coach on the sideline said the ref needs to pay, that's the end of the discussion for me. Like, if you want to make suspend the players because you kind of have to, okay, cool. I got you. But I think we found our villain here, and the villain is the grown-up. Because one of those guys played the rest of the game. Like, after that happened, one of those kids played the rest of the game. And you know why he played the rest of the game? Because we have made high school sports about winning above anything else. And it can't be that. Like, I'm not saying that if you're running a high school sports program that you should not try to win. I'm not saying anything like that. But it's a dangerous game when the coaches are professionals and the players are amateurs. Because that's the thing. All those coaches are professionals. No matter how you look at it, they get paid to do that job. And high school coaches now, more than ever, these guys aren't trying to be high school coaches forever. They're not trying to be high school coaches at this. They look at themselves as being no different than the NFL coaches. They just work in high school. You know what I mean? They're having the same meetings. They're watching the same film. If it's like small town high school stuff, that coach matters around there. He's the celebrity in town. He's the big guy, everything else. Those guys, they are professionals. And they send their amateurs to do their bidding. That's how it works. And a sophomore in high school is not going to tell his 29-year-old assistant coach, no, sir. Especially not if you tell him he gets to hit the referee. Like, really, we do? Gotcha, we got that.
Especially when you're told by the adult, your coach, hey, take care of this.
Take care of this.
And you're a sophomore. You have potentially 2 more seasons after this to play under this coaching staff, and you tell them no. That's not going to happen.
I'm just saying, man, the solution to these problems is not the law. The solution to these problems is not your solution is not less school. That can never. Maybe the solution needs to be more school, right? Or I saw a suggestion on the internet, maybe have those kids like volunteer with people who have suffered traumatic brain injuries so they can think about like what the worst case scenario could have been and what they've done. But if your game is those kids need to be taken out of school, like have you ever even stopped and thought about how stupid that is? Like in your brain and in your mind, have you stopped and thought about how stupid that is? Yeah, suspend them from playing football. Suspend them for the year if you want to. But I don't think they should go to school anymore. Yeah, that'll help everybody.
Bomani.
I have to say, this is really cool to me. I don't want to date our next guest, but when I was a much younger man, I grew up in Houston. I used to call up the sports talk stations to talk to the reporter from the Houston Chronicle who would give information on the radio, whose name was John McClain, and now I got a radio show, and I can have John McClain on it now. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, first of all, Bomani, I've been wondering how long it's going to be before you had me on. And number 2, you're calling me right when your hometown team is on HBO for its last appearance on Hard Knocks.
Well, we had to. That's the thing. We have to come to work on Hard Knocks with the people in the car. We figure we're giving that Texas picks with you right now, man. So how's that been? You've seen so much in the league. How's it been having the HBO crew around?
I got to tell you the truth. I was really worried originally because I thought they were going to get information that I had no access to, news. And Bill O'Brien never wanted them. Gary Kubiak had been able to avoid Hard Knocks, but the owner, Bob McNair, wanted people to see the Texans, wanted to spread the brand. So O'Brien didn't have a choice. Now O'Brien's kind of emerged as a star, and tonight's the last episode. And we asked O'Brien yesterday how he felt to not have the cameras around for the first time since before training camp. He said, it's the second best day of my life to when my kids were born, and I guess when I was married.
Well, I'll say this. They've got a team that was worth watching on Hard Knocks. Now, do they have a team that's going to be worth watching when the football games are real?
Well, as you know, because I know you keep up with them, last year they went from 2-14 to 9-7 in Bill O'Brien's first year. And O'Brien's the 11th head coach I've covered in Houston in my 37 years of covering the NFL for the Chronicle. And I believe, based on what I saw last year, he can be a great coach. And his specialty is quarterbacks. Last year, Bomani, they played 4, started 3. Ryan Fitzpatrick, they started him, benched, hurt later. Ryan Mallett, 1-1, hurt. Tom Savage, hurt. Case Keenum, brought him in from deer hunting in Missouri, and he won the last 2 games when O'Brien tailored everything in the game plan, not from what the Texans do, but for what Case Keenum did at the University of Houston. They went back and watched that tape, and they beat Baltimore and Jacksonville, missed the playoffs on the last day of the season. Now they have Brian Hoyer. He had Hoyer 3 years in New England. He likes Hoyer. He knows that Hoyer's not the franchise quarterback. They're still looking for that guy. But they believe they will have the Brian Hoyer, who started 9-3 at Cleveland with 15 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and not the Hoyer, who was terrible over the end of the year when he was 1-3, 1 touchdown, 8 interceptions, benched for Johnny Football, and that's the whole key. Hoyer doesn't have to win games. He's got to move the chains, don't turn it over, manage the game. Bill O'Brien thinks he can do that, and they can be a playoff contender.
All right, you're talking to John McClain of the Houston Chronicle. Now, was there anything that they were able to point to that happened in that 4-game stretch in Cleveland so they can avoid it in Houston?
The offensive coordinator, George Godsey, says that sometimes Hoyer will take risk. He said, and that comes down to coaching. You show him on tape what you did, why did you do it, and you just constantly stretch it. Last year, Bomani, they went from minus 20 in turnover ratio when they were 2-14 to plus 12, tied the Patriots for second in the league. And they just didn't turn it over much, and that's their MO. Play great defense. They think they're going to have a great defense. Run the ball a lot. They ran the ball more than any team in the league last year. We're 5th in rushing, and control the clock, and don't ask the quarterback to do too much. That's the philosophy they used last year. That's the philosophy they'll use this year. And the key, of course, is they don't have Arian Foster. He can miss the first 4 games, and they've got a second-year back, Alfred Blue, who was his backup last year. Right now, Blue's important as any player on the offense, because if he can't help them get a productive running game, that offense is in big trouble.
All right, now you mentioned the defense. We know they have the best player in the NFL in J.J. Watt. They also have maybe the most physically talented player in the NFL in Jadeveon Clowney, except we haven't had the chance to see him do much in the NFL. How much do they reasonably expect from him coming off the microfracture?
Bomani, 9 months ago, Clowney had microfracture surgery, and you hear microfracture and you freak out. Everybody in Houston, his career's over. Well, in the past, guys would have microfracture surgery as a last resort after multiple surgeries. Now, because of the technique, because of the rehab, it's not as serious. When Darrelle Revis disclosed that he had microfracture surgery 2 years ago, they're like, whoa, he just got $60 million guaranteed. So if he can come back at cornerback at his age, why can't a 21-year-old Clowney come back? They have had a plan from about 6 months ago when they saw how he was progressing. Everything was designed to have him play opening day against Kansas City, probably as a pass rusher, and how much he's able to play depends on what he can handle. They will have him on a pitch count because it's been a long time since he's played, and it didn't play much last year because of multiple injuries. But having him on the side, opposite Watt or on Watt's side, with Brian Cushing returning healthy, Vince Wilfork in the middle, they think their front 7 could be special.
Well, are they still as excited about Clowney as they were when they took him?
No, well, right now they're not, because they're not sure about the injury. You know, when they took him, he wasn't hurt. He flashed in the preseason last year. First of all, he had a sports hernia in June. He got that taken care of. Then in the first 2 preseason games, he made 2 great plays in the backfield. Everybody's like, wow, take your breath away, quickness off the ball, explosion to the quarterback. And then we didn't see that again because he hurt his knee in the first game. So now he was supposed to be best pass rusher for a generation once-a-generation talent, but it may be physically and mentally 2016 before we know for sure how close he is to the prospect when he was drafted number one. Right now, they just like to see him get on the field for a full season.
All right, last question for John McClain of the Houston Chronicle. Have you gotten used to the fact that Andre Johnson is just not on that team anymore?
We weren't allowed into the dressing room till this week because of training camp. And the players had talked about when they went in for the off-season program, and they didn't see him in there as weird. So I just kind of approached it like he was injured or he was holding out or something like that. And when I went into the dressing room and I went down to interview DeAndre Hopkins, who dressed a couple of spots over, I looked at his old locker and I thought, wow, first time in 12 years he's not there. Spent a lot of time standing there while he got dressed. And it was strange. But now Hopkins has got to emerge as the guy. Learned a lot under Johnson. Johnson will come back to Houston on October the 5th game, prime time for the Colts. That's going to be one of the biggest games in Houston history.
Well, I tell you, you mentioned the Colts. It's so crazy to think that all this time the Texans have been trying to find a quarterback since that division got started. The Colts got Peyton Manning, had that one-off year, and they get Andrew Luck, and the Texans are still trying to find that quarterback.
It should be illegal for what happened at Green Bay with Favre and Rodgers and for what's happened in Indianapolis with Manning and Luck. It should be, Roger Goodell should put up a rule that you can't have two quarterbacks like that back-to-back. Just doesn't seem fair. Or pass them around every team. And another thing, Luck's from Houston, and all his family's there. That makes it even worse.
John McClain of the Houston Chronicle. May have to get you back on a little later in the season if Baylor keeps this thing up, because I know no one enjoys Baylor football being successful more than John McClain.
Hey, that's the truth, Bomani. Anytime. I appreciate you having me. Congratulations on your success. I love watching you and listening to you, and I'd be honored to come on again.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll talk to you again soon. That's John McClain of the Houston Chronicle.